Yeah, we are concluding this week of the conference, The Art Museum in the Digital Age, as usual with a panel discussion where we try to pick up some of the issues that have been discussed throughout the week. I think we heard really great presentations, about 20 papers that were addressing various issues, mostly AI, Web3, and so on. And for me, it's now my pleasure to very shortly just say who's on the panel this year, because I briefed them. They should kind of introduce themselves indirectly by talking about briefly in a first round what really moves them, what are the projects or the ideas that they are thinking every day in relation to the digital transformation of art museums. But just briefly here we have from the left to the right, we have Sophia Wittmann. She is founder and CEO of Museum Booster. To her left is Kimmo Leve, who is the General Director of the Finnish National Gallery. Then we have Nina Rörs, who is founder and CEO of Rörs and Böttch. And then we have also here tonight Gerfried Stocker, Director of Ars Electronica. So in order to get started, I really just want to give the word to you for brief statement, brief introduction, and I wonder where we want to start. We haven't discussed that before. Do we want to start, Sophia?
Thank you, Christian, and hello, everybody. I was thinking about how should I introduce myself, to put it very much in a nutshell. I'm Sophia, and I love museums very much. So I wonder, and why do people, or in general those that are considered to be frequent visitors to museums, they go to museums only 3 times per year? I'm actually sad about the statistics. I believe that museums should play a much bigger role in the people's lives, to play a bigger role in satisfying their needs, and to be in general part of their life. So at Museum Booster, if I again put it in a nutshell to summarize what we're doing, we want that museums play a bigger role in the society, and we want that museums become more personalized in a way, more needs-oriented towards other people. And that more people of different backgrounds go to museums and have the need to go to the museums. And here I see 2 major elements that can be reshaped. And here, of course, the technological developments play a major role. The first one is the link between museums and people in general. That link has to be improved in a way that people that are going to the museums, they should feel that they have a need to go there. There is a personal connection to the museum, and from my perspective, it has to reveal a certain emotion. I like very much, even though it's controversial, there was an exhibition by Alain de Botton at Rijksmuseum some time ago, where he tried to reshape the thinking about how do traditional museums see what is current exhibitions. And his role or his approach was not to structure exhibition spaces by epochs or by different historical periods, but by the emotions that that are provoked in the people. If you are in love, or if you are depressed, you need to take some inspiration from somewhere. And who would be not a better, or what would be not a better place than a museum? And from my perspective, museums should not be just a space, a building where people can spend time and enjoy artworks, it should be part of their lives. It should be an atmosphere, or it should be mode of need or of life where to spend time. And here I believe that digital technologies can play a major role. The second link is museums and museums. I believe that museums have to work together in this battle towards winning more people and being more relevant for the society in the 21st age with the influence of technology. And here I believe in connection, stronger connection between different museums around the globe. And for that we have initiated one project which is called Museum Leadership House, where we bring together 30 museum directors from around the world in a house where they generate crazy ideas about what museums can do in the society where we face technological disruptions, cost of living crisis, climate change. What can museums do for that? And another project is called Future Museum, which is a research project together with various international research partners, but also institutions from all over the world like Belvedere, Getty, Centre Pompidou, Guggenheim Bilbao, Finnish National Gallery, and many more that are united in a thinking what can museums in practical terms do in order to be more relevant for the people, in order that how they can reshape the models on which they are built on. So that's what we do. That's what I personally that's my mission in a way.
I have my own mic. Yes, I'm Kimmo Levä, and I, like Christian said, I work for the Finnish National Gallery, and yes, I'm also a museum lover, but I dare to say also that I'm a museum professional, because I have worked in my first working place I took in museum was in 1985, and I have worked as a museum director since 1994. And all my career I have interested in strategical questions of museums, and this time is very nice time for think about the strategical questions because of this digital transformation that we have now going on, and there's a lot of questions that we need to discuss, and also Finnish National Gallery has very nice strategy, because we have decided that we will open a new museum, and it will open in coming maybe in 2026, but it is pure digital, and it will be alongside the physical ones. But yes, we don't know what kind of museum it will be, and that's why it's very nice that we can discuss many things during this conference and also in this event. But there's a lot of strategic questions that we need to solve. First of all, I think that when we talk about the digitalization in museum branch, we need to we need to know what we talk about. So I've noticed also so far that someone thinks that, or understand that the digitalization in museum branch is that we use digital tools in our museum buildings. But our starting point is different. We are making a museum in a digital operational environment. And I think that it is only wise way if we need to utilize the possibilities of digitalization in museums. And then second point I like to highlight here is the strategical point again. So we face maybe someone says that we are in front of industrial revolution now, and we have at least we will have a new technological leap ahead. So it is quite obvious that digital world will come alongside and equal word for physical world. At least we saw so, and that raised quite many questions. So how do we invest enough in our digital things, or is the combination right that how much we invest in physical world and how much we invest in digital world? I think that we need to invest more in digital format. And the third part, I have only four. So third one is that I think that we too rarely we think that and recognize that that current museum concept is from the 18th or 19th century. So it's very old. And I like to everyone ask themselves, if you are museum professional, questions that what if museum were invented today? Would the concept be the same than we have had since 18th century or 19th century? And I think it would be different. If we invented museum today, I think that the first step would be digital. And it's also obvious that this current museum concept doesn't work well. It's all too expensive. It's a European creation, and it seems to be all too expensive for European museum nowadays, because new museums are established nowadays in rich old countries or in China, not in Europe. And one problem in this current concept is that we are so keen on our buildings that many think that museum and building is the synonym, and that's why we have investment. We invest a lot to these buildings, and what we have get in Finnish National Gallery. 2% of all our collection can be displayed on our museum buildings, and we have 3 different and very big museum buildings. And when I have discussed with our colleagues in Nordic countries and in Europe, when I say that, well, we have 2% of our collections we can display, and they said, well, very high rate you have. So maybe this problem must be solved. We have, of course, we have possibilities, but I'm not sure that the solution for this problem is that yes, we will make new buildings in the middle of Helsinki. No, I don't think so. And the fourth one is the business logic. If we want to succeed in digital format, in digital operation environment, we need to find a direct business logic, how we can earn money. Nowadays, if we think the business logics that museum, at least in Finland, have in digital world, it's some kind of indirect. We think that if we have good content in museum website or other platforms, maybe they come to visit our museum and pay this ticket. That won't work. We need to find direct way to earn money also in digital operation environment, but it is difficult, because in that world the data is the most valuable asset, and in many cases we have given already this data away for free for many organizations and for all. Like we heard on Monday that Google Arts use quite interesting way our data nowadays. But yes, this was and for the first round, some thoughts that I think that I would like to share with you.
Yeah, thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm Nina Röers, and I'm specialized in art in the digital age. Before that, I worked 14 years in the financial industries for the Swiss bank UBS, and really in banking, so not in art banking. And then after that, I decided in 2016 to start a gallery with a focus on art in the digital age in Zurich. And that was driven by kind of two sorts. One was that art should be a reflection of our life, and the digitalization is one of the key topics for the individual and society today, and also one of the key challenges. And at the same time, artists have very unique and different ways to see, digest, and communicate. And I strongly feel that we need that voice in today's society and their perspective also to overcome or solve and approach certain issues in different ways, next to politics and legal perspectives and business perspectives. For 5 years, we mainly worked with native digital artists who worked with new media about new media. And when you do that, you come in touch with all sorts of topics and technologies, such as networks like early net art, surveillance, augmented reality, virtual reality, artificial intelligence, and lately also Web3, so blockchain and NFT. And of course also like crossovers in artistic production or creation between the physical and the digital, so-called fidgeters, and 3D printing. Another aspect that was also always of great interest to us and still is to me was to find new ways of exhibiting where traditional methods fail. And just to give you one example, for example, to use virtual reality for three-dimensional digital sculptures, because it doesn't make much sense, or it's very difficult to put a three-dimensional digital object in a physical space. If you put it on a screen, it is flat. If you 3D print it, it is stable and needs to follow gravity. And all these things somehow do not exist in the digital world. But if you put on the VR glasses, you have a space, you have the work, you have a feeling for your own body size, and let's say you have a digital experience that's quite similar to the physical experience that you might have when you're standing in front of a three-dimensional work. Since 2020, I advise and curate, mainly working with institutions and players in the art world. Most recent projects are an exhibition about art in the context of blockchain and NFT at Kunsthalle Zurich that closed 1 year ago. And I'm building a new sector for the biggest art fair focusing on photography, Paris Photo. They want to, or they already did in November, started with a new sector focusing on art and photography in the digital age, which is very much about the role of the image in an increasingly digital world. And that's something, let's say, that goes back to the 1960s and ends with today's artistic production. And finally, maybe 2 statements for our discussion that seem quite at the heart of what I'm thinking about a lot at the moment. I feel, and that's also why I'm always saying art in the digital age and not digital art, that art in the digital context is not a separate genre, and that's also why I'm refraining from using that term digital art. We live in a digital age, and to me it makes more sense to look at art in that context. So for example, to look at what the digitalization does to painting, to sculpture, to image production, and to approach it from that direction instead of putting everything in one bucket, as if we would say paint art. In the end, it doesn't say much about what's going on. And it's also an acknowledgement, of course, that we still lack a lot of the vocabulary that we might need to adequately talk about the world that we are facing today, and that's to come. And in the same way, I feel that we need to overcome this idea that we can separate our digital and our physical life, respectively, to talk about them as if they were different realities. It's to me simply not right that the digital is virtual and the physical is real. I think we kind of, beyond that. It might have been true like 10 or 20 years ago, but definitely not after the pandemic we all went through and the way we lived our life in this context. So that's it. I'm looking forward to this discussion.
Thank you very much. So it has been said already, I'm a director of Ars Electronica in Linz. This is a cultural, educational and research institution. And so as a long-term practitioner, because I had this wonderful privilege already in 1995 to start to work for Ars Electronica, and was strongly involved in this very significant transformation of an annual festival into something that is a very multidimensional, as I said, cultural, artistic, educational, as well as research institution. And I'm always super happy now to see how many activities are unfolding on a very high level with really lots of ambitions. I mean, I know many of these things very well. And seeing how cultural institutions, in particular museums, are now really jumping into taking up the responsibility that I think cultural institutions have, not only to think about their transition into the digital age, but also how the digital age, of course, can shape the museum. So the title, of course, of this conference, like of many other discourses in this direction, always has to be read in these two directions. Art museums in the digital age, but then again, almost I think what's more interesting is what has the digital age to do in the museums? How can museums become ready? How do they have to prepare to introduce, to welcome the digital age? How can we do this in a way that we are not just fighting with the problems and then hoping, like everybody else, that technology will suddenly solve the problems that we have with museums in our modern life? I mean, the really usual stupid thing, as you know, there's this wonderful saying, if you believe that technology solves your problems, you don't understand technology, but even more, you don't even understand your problems. And a lot of these discussions are going in this direction. And I'm always very critical, not because I'm critical about these endeavors and energy, but of course I have seen so many wrong attempts. I have seen so many cases where the language of ID, marketing, gadget geeks is suddenly taken over without much reflection. And then I always get, am I here at a marketing seminar or am I here with cultural professionals? And I expect from people in culture and art, of course, to be much more critical. I mean, I don't necessarily expect it when they go to some, agency that is consulting companies or banks or offices, but I think in the art we have this additional role. So there are these two ways in terms of looking at this transformation. And then, of course, we look at the topic of art. You referred to it already, the very important discussion, how do we even call it? And of course, the moment we discuss about the name for it, we already discuss, of course, ownership, which kind of approach to culture, what type of institutions should have the right now to finally own also digital art. And then, of course, the old pioneers from my age, they immediately cry up and say, no, this is all completely wrong. And then to a certain extent, what could be actually more boring, considering all these wonderful possibilities that this technology can give us, then thinking about, okay, let's build now a virtual museum, because museums are buildings, and now we make a building in the digital space, and then we have a museum in the digital world. And I'm saying this really with all the irony and despicable as much as it's necessary, because this is really a complete waste of time. I mean, Kimo referred to it, we really have to go much deeper. We have to rethink. We should use the opportunity. I mean, it's the transformation that is going on now in every area of our life, as we have heard so often, and it's of course true, is also really a great opportunity to look for new direction, not just to look for those things in the digital world that finally can fit in our structure. And I really have to say, when the whole NFT thing started, you know, I was completely struck and I was totally puzzled. I mean, how can it be that, you know, such a stupid thing is now getting the super attention of all the super intelligent people who have so much experience, who have been withstanding so many seductions of these digital hypes. And now suddenly they all fall in the same trap. And of course it has much to do that when we try to adopt to new things, we try to adopt the new things. That's the usual way. I mean, this is, of course, not only in the cultural way, even more so than many others. First, we try to say, okay, how can we change these things so that they fit again in our structures, in our expectations? And that's fine. Of course, everybody does it, but I think in culture we have, or we should have higher standards for this. And I think the museum, and I think we're all museum lovers, probably everybody here, and each of us is going more than 3 times a year in a museum. And I think museums really should be much more confident by going into this digital age. Many of these discussions are kind of driven by the kind of feeling, yeah, we are from this analog old world, so how can we catch up? I mean, forget it. Museums have super advantages. Most of the museums have highly attractive locations, which are just by the location itself is more than enough reason to stay connected with the museum. They are super dedicated locations. It's a location where nothing else is happening. I mean, go to a supermarket, everything is there. Go to a museum and you are in the pulsating, living heart of culture. And I think also a very important message is museums have the most important asset is a lot of super dedicated people who have probably the highest level of competence in contextualizing things. And I think this is something that we should not only use in terms of, you know, how can we work as museums and how can we transform for ourselves, but we have to see that this is a role of culture and cultural institutions that is of extremely high value and necessity for the society at large, because the problems that we see in our world are usually just small scale of the problems that are going on with this digital transformation in the big society, and I think we should be the ones who can contribute to it as well. So let's go digital.
Yeah, thank you for these initial statements. There was so much in there that I actually have to think what the common denominator is to keep going. I think in many of those statements was actually implicitly this thing of how do you reconcile the digital and the analog, because by now I think we are talking a lot about post-digital and hybridity. It seems clear that the digital is not just a replica of the analog. You cannot just duplicate what we have done so far. It was also mentioned that we have a lot of tradition and that the idea of the museum is an idea of the Enlightenment, and the idea of art is even older. So there's a lot of weight on the tradition. And Kimmo actually said, what if we would invent this idea of the museum right now? So I wonder, we know we cannot just continue doing what we did in the past, but what is it then on many levels, what we should do and must do in 10 years from now? How do we actually exhibit art in this in a completely different way, in a different world? Then there was also the question of what are the business models then, because we cannot forever think that, say, tourism will rescue us. There are a lot of museums that don't even have that. So what could be revenues from the digital formats? I think that's also a big question that we should address, and many more. But who wants to take up just in general the question, what if we would reinvent or invent a museum right now? What would we do? Please.
As I mentioned in the beginning, in the introduction, I believe that museums should become not just the buildings, but the environment for the people to develop. And for that, I believe the technologies and also artificial intelligence can be used in order to get more targeted or target the needs of the people. If we compare it with medicine, my dad is a doctor and my whole family are doctors, there are different aspects. There is a general medicine and personalized medicine. You can prescribe a certain medicament for people that have a certain disease, say depression, and if we look at the person and their individual factors, how they react to a special drug, in certain way you need to know their condition, heart condition, and many other things. That's called an individualized medicine. So in this way, comparing museums to doctors, I think that in the digital realm there is a possibility to target the interests, the needs of the people, and make sure that the potential that the people have in grasping the art world or the world of the science is bigger. I believe that the intention of museums is to inspire and to motivate people to do more informed decisions and to be more happy, probably, as well.
Well, yes, that is crucial questions that we need to find out and figure out new concept and how we try to do it in Finnish National Gallery. Of course, we participate this kind of conferences. We are a member of Museum Boosters network. We need a lot of information. What are those customer needs and what kind of services people want to use in digital format? I'm pretty sure that they don't just want to visit some building in digital world, and that is the questions that we don't have answer yet. But we do different kind of pilots and try to get more information behind that. And museum like all other businesses took a digital leap during the COVID time, and it was good, but the negative side was that it came so fast that all solutions we made into digital world, we just copying the analog world, and those solutions was so poor that no one wants to see those, and I think that it still affects a bit that people think that they can't be interesting contents or solution in digital format, but I hope that now we have still more time to think about these concepts, and yes, we really need to read through this museum definition, and it doesn't says that museums we must maintain buildings. So even though we use 40% of all our resources to maintain those, but still it is not in a museum definition.
I mean, I feel that we already saw in the pandemic that we are facing two different worlds. We do have the world of museums that work mainly with physical artifacts, and it's way different to bring this in the digital age. It's a completely different approach and thinking. Might also be more about the education or the experience that you create around them in your physical buildings through digital means. Then there, of course, there's this world of digital native artists or creatives, and there it's more about finding the right ways of exhibiting or showcasing their works. And sometimes that's something that makes a lot of sense in a physical space, but in many cases, as we also saw during the pandemic, can also work in digital environments. And native digital artworks, they lean themselves, or they're way easier to translate into the digital world, because somehow they're then exhibited or experienced in an environment where they come from the screen environment. And it's very different from digitizing a physical artwork that's then losing texture and context and dimensions. So I think there is not we also need to differentiate between these categories in order to find the right strategies for museums.
Yeah, I think we probably have to be much more brave, risk-taking and experimental. I mean, the possibility that the solution will lie in a kind of next just extension of the museum as we know it is, I think, not very high. I mean, in the last century, it still was enough, like here. I think this was built in the 1950s or something. That's where this structure here comes from. So museum were, of course, creating a new space, a new building for the new art, because the art itself was not so much changing. Now, from a more distant perspective, we know already that also these locations, these museums, these showcases for the contemporary art of the last century didn't actually cover the whole interesting quantity and broad spectrum of different art forms. So by putting old ideas of structures as the paradigm for new spaces or new approaches, we of course start already a very limiting and selecting approach to the art. And I think this would be, the biggest mistake that we can make, because in all these decades that I'm working with digital art now, my excitement has always been about this constant changing, evolving form of art. And every year there are new approaches. And every year, of course, young artists do the same thing that the old ones did already, but some of them do it in a new way. And it's the driving force behind it that is so much more interesting than the idea that sometimes some of them will be very valuable and who collected it will be very rich. I mean, that's an important part of art and art market, we know it, but the driving force, I think, is more interesting. So we need to be very careful not to limit and already put these dynamics into boxes. And maybe the type of museum that we have right now is a matter of the past, as in many ways this idea of the finished piece of art is a matter of the past, as Robert Adrian X, a very important artist here from Vienna, once said. Because what we see in all these many developments is always this change from finished pieces to process, from document to event, as Masaki Fujihata, another important artist from Japan, put it. So at the moment we are, and I'm also talking of our experiments, we are still very much clinging to this idea that we need a kind of hybridity. So it seems like the golden standard is how can we create a hybrid between the real and the virtual. I mean, hybrid was like the buzzword in the pandemics. And with all our events, I mean, we made several festivals and concert series and all, and we tried to be hybrid. But the main experience and learning for us was that hybrid is always a compromise. So maybe we have to think more of a duality and create spaces completely outside of the structures of museum, yet informed and driven and organized by people with the knowledge and competence of cultural institutions. And in the same way as in all the history, I mean, usually museums are not built somewhere where there are no people. Successful museums are built in cities. I mean, we see it now with the Wien Museum here in Vienna, and this super nice idea to say, okay, the exhibition is free and everybody's running to the museum. So what is the city in this digital age? I mean, is it really the best idea to try to bring this into the structures, or do we have to say, okay, well, we know our structures very well, and I think we all can be sure the museum will not die. I mean, the traditional form of a museum, the type of exhibition, I mean, there's nothing is more successful at the moment. Again, look at the last weeks in the Wien Museum and in many other international museums. So, I mean, that's good. We can be, safe. We don't have to necessarily change this. But based on this experience and these strengths, we should be much more brave and risk-taking to go and to venture into new territories.
I think I totally agree with especially this aspect of daring and experimenting, and I would also suggest to do this whenever possible, not with the tech companies who do not really come from that field and are also trying to marketing solutions and, if possible, also solutions that are scalable. I would rather turn to the earlier generations or more critical generations of artists who circle around our digitalization. Like, for example, when we looked at the early net artists who in the 90s discovered the internet or the pre-successors of today's internet and felt, okay, that's a way for us to circumvent the middlemen and to reach a global audience directly by creating a website, and the website was the artwork itself. I mean, that's ways of reaching people and also ways of using technology in different ways to get to people. And I feel that there are many artists out there who work natively digital, who really understand these tools and have a very good feeling for what you could do around them, and then also in a very critical way at the same time. And I would definitely start there.
Yeah, it's also interesting because there were some metaphors about where we are right now. There was a sense of crisis or something coming to an end, but then also another metaphor that I now dropped. Another artist once said museums have the problem that they are in a vicious cycle of success. Isn't success actually sometimes a problem too, to be really innovative and try something completely different? And Kimo, you actually were also quite provocative with your statement that we are living in a society of data, and that museums' data should also be able to be monetized. Because especially the GLAM community and open access and open content people don't really want to hear that. But then on the other side, I'm always thinking about newspapers 20 years ago when everybody expected that the digital version must be for free. There is nothing that you can actually charge for. Is that also now coming to the museums, that we have to find revenue flows from digital content, and it will not be just selling reproductions as museums always did. It must be highly researched content, perhaps, that could be sold it away. I don't know. But what made you put out this statement that sparked a big discussion?
Yes, actually, when we operate in digital world, the asset is data. How we can use content and how we can make new contents, we need to use data. And what is the yes, in GLAM and we have given this open access to our museum data. It is well, we have done it, and that it is. I think it might be good for a museum, and had been, but still now we need to find a new way how to monetize this data we have. Maybe we do something extra to it, or we make NFT from this data, or what else? How can we monetize our own data? That because someone else do it. So it would be easy if a state or cities pay all our costs, then we can share. But it seems, at least in Finland, that the public economy is in the quite bad shape, that we need to make more and more money from direct operations, and now we have more opportunities because of this digital operational environment. But there is the data is the most valuable asset in there.
For me, frankly speaking, the topic of monetization is in a way links to the topic. If people are ready to pay for something, then they're really willing to get the product or the offer. I believe that if everything is set up for free, all of the content is for free, sometimes people do not feel the urge or the need to use the content. And if it's packed from the marketing side in a way that the users have fear of missing out and they have a pure interest in getting the content, then they would also pay for that. If we look at, for example, The Economist, for me the shift which is currently happening now in the museum world, bringing content online, is very similar in a way to what happened to the newspaper, as Christian, you have mentioned. And if we look at The Economist, for example, how they do it, they tease you with a very interesting information, and then if you want to get to read more in depth, then you have to pay for that. Yeah. Similarly, just recently, I received an advertisement from LinkedIn or Instagram, I don't remember, that if you want to listen to the panel of the founder of OpenAI and someone else from the sector, that's an offer which is available only to the subscribers of The Economist.
Yes, I agree. This digital transformation has happened, like you said, in many other sectors, in newspapers, in music, and in many sectors. So I think that is one reason why we need to pay more attention to digital things in museums, because it is quite obvious that that will also happen in museum sector.
Yeah,
it is already happening.
Yeah, it's going on, and future is not. It is not in the same level everywhere.
May I just come to another data-related issue, because it was a lot mentioned in the conference papers in relation to artificial intelligence. Artificial intelligence, to a certain extent, is promoted for the museum as something that enables you to personalize your museum's experience. At the same time, there's a lot of data collected, and I think that was also very visible in some of the talks that has to do with surveillance. Is there something that needs to be discussed, or not feared? I don't want to say feared, but is this a development that is good for the field? There's also this term of the smart museum now around that comes, I guess, from smart cars and smart houses, where machines run everything for you. Is that still, first of all, the experience that we want to have from a museum? And secondly, do we need to agree that they are collecting data?
I mean, somehow that leads us back to this, for me, one of the questions that's at the core of if digitalization goes well for society or not: convenience. We all, as humans, tend to like a convenient environment or situations, and that also leads to the fact that we don't care much, for example, in today's world about our data. If we think that it's convenient for us to use eBay, then we give eBay our data. We use Google, and we just do that because we all feel we somehow need these services. And if the museum manages, I think, up at a certain point to give you a better experience based on AI, then I'm pretty sure that most people will easily agree and sign any waiver that you can collect the data to give them a better experience. And in itself, that's very problematic.
I need to come back to the business thing before we talk about surveillance, because I'm really very critical about this comparison with the newspapers, because it implies that any newspaper is actually really making a significant revenue from their paywalls. Newspapers are a dying species because their real business models always has been advertisement. I have been, for a special project we are doing right now, I think, looking at several hundreds newspapers from the 19th century. And advertisement was the most important thing already at this time. This is how newspaper, and also we know it from television, this is actually the business model behind it. And the question now is, when this business model is no longer really working because advertisement can be done so much more efficiently in the digital world, we will see, whether we like it or not, that newspapers and media in the way we know it right now are really a matter of the past. Not because people don't like news, not because people are not willing to pay for it, but the marketplace is constantly, completely shifting to another area. And I don't want to talk too much about the media marketplace, that's another thing, but what's the important learning for me from this is that we need to be much more innovative. Just thinking of, okay, we have this wonderful content now digital, so let's charge for it. I mean, this is a waste of time. The example that you said with The Economist, I think that's the right direction. And I know with the DOOR study you have investigated so many more interesting concepts already and ideas that museums are having all around the world, that making money and creating business in this will be, I think, only successful on new territories and with new ideas. And this is where we really have to put a lot of creativity and again risk-taking, because many of the ideas that we can try out right now might not be successful. But one thing is clear, just copying the old business model will not be working. And the whole thing about data and the surveillance, I mean, the only thing one can really say to this is the reality of digital technology. The real power of digital technology, why it is so mighty and successful, is because it's super great in collecting, aggregating, interpreting lots of data in a very efficient way. And this means whatever you do, this means you are automatically creating. The moment you engage digital technology, you are creating a situation of control and surveillance. So what is the consequence of this? Responsibility, awareness. And this is where I'm absolutely, for me, that's an absolute important thing. As museums, as cultural institutions, we need to go first with ethical, moral considerations. This is a responsibility that we have. And I think this brings me back to the business models, because the business models of culture, of course, there is real business always behind it, but the most important justification always has been to serve the public, to serve the society. And I think when we look in these directions, you know, how can we be of value? I think this is very much what you also described. Then we will find plenty of, you know, opportunities to prove that you're valuable and to convince people that they will pay for it. And I don't think it's necessary that this will be always individual people paying privately. When we serve, when we are purpose for society, then I think it's absolutely okay that we also get public money from the society to deliver these functions.
Thank you so much. Thanks to all the panelists for sharing their thoughts on the topic. I also thank everybody who came here to this final event of our this year's conference, the Art Museum in the Digital World, and also to all the people out there. I shall say, from my perspective, it was a very rich and successful conference. We had about 1,000 registrations on Zoom, and every day hundreds of people listening to the papers. So I think that's a great thing. For people here in the audience, we can actually continue our discussion outside with a glass of wine and some bites. I know that's not very fair to the other ones that are at home somewhere, but we were open, so you could have come. And finally, I also want to thank again all the colleagues from the Belvedere here who helped in running this project, because I think I'm so surprised that every year we manage to somehow not producing a major clash and problem. So 6 years in a row we were fine, and thanks everybody that it worked. So in this sense, have a good evening.